Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and these are the games leaving my collection in January. January absolutely flew by. It's the first month of the year, 2022. Games are still coming in, games are still going, which is time for the usual disclaimer that I get in a lot of games. I rotate my collection. By no means of the fact that I'm getting rid of a bunch of games that you might love or have never tried anything doesn't mean they're bad games. I'm going to go over why they're leaving my collection for each one, and some of them are I'm just not personally enamored with enough to keep compared to other games that I do have. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the ones that I'm most on the fence about for last. We'll go into those at the end. But I have a whole bunch that I can actually just get rid of without having to overthink it, without losing sleep at night, because sometimes I'm really searching around for games to get rid of because there's only so much space, there's only so much time, and I need to, well, not need to, but I want to play more games. I want to get more games. If I'm ever going to keep getting more games, I have to get rid of games. So, starting off the bat, let's go ahead, and again, these are all the easy picks starting off, although there might be a few surprises. Timestamps down below. Starting off the bat, we have Stitch'em, otherwise known as Stickum in English, and this is one that I finally played this one because I started to like trick-taking games, or at least I thought maybe I did. I played The Crew, well, I've played The Crew for a while now, but recently I found Ghosts of Christmas, which I've really been enjoying, and so I pulled this game that's been sitting on my shelf for 2 years. I pulled it off my shelf to finally get a table, and I tabled it. And I was reminded of why I don't like trick-taking games. Stickum is a game in which you're playing tricks, but you're basically trying to stick players with the color that they don't want, because that will be worth a ton of negative points. I can see where the strategy lies in this one. I just don't find it fun. I don't find it compelling enough. It's one of the many trick-taking games I haven't loved. I still am exploring new trick-taking games because Ghost of Christmas is fantastic. I also played Gorus Maximus recently, which certainly was not bad either. Not as good as Ghost of Christmas, though, so it's not going to stick around either. But Stickum is one that I didn't enjoy. I'd play this again reluctantly because of how short it was, but I wouldn't be looking forward to that experience. Next up, we have Sriracha. I think it's pronounced Sriracha, like the sauce, I assume. But Sriracha is a game that I had the chance to dive into. I covered this in a roundup series of reviews, so if you saw that, 5 games. Sriracha was okay, but at the same time, it did nothing compelling to me. It's basically set collection. You're going to be trying to gather various shops, paying cubes for those shops, and then building out the shops. There's just not a lot of interesting decision-making to be had throughout the course of the game. It's totally fine, but it's fine in that sense of it's fine. It didn't do anything that was captivating to me. If this was your first intro, if this was something that you were diving into board games for the first time, I can see this being fun. It checks off a lot of the boxes that modern game design does, but it doesn't do anything compelling. Like, if you're looking at Sriracha, I would say, no, do not get this game. Get Century Golem Edition, Century Spice Road, or Splendor. If you want a generic game that kind of has a degree of set collection that's fun to a degree, but has a lot more interesting elements while still being accessible, I think there are other games. There's nothing wrong with this one. It's as vanilla as I can get in my experience. I'm not going to miss it. Would I play it again? Sure, but I'm certainly not going to miss it. From there we have Katamino. This is also part of a different series. No, it's part of the same series of 5 games that I went into in a review with my daughter. Actually, we went over all of these. Katamino is fun. It's okay. It doesn't really do anything amazing for me. I think it's very solid at what it's doing. Katamino is basically about organizing polyomino shapes to fit a puzzle. There's a challenge head-to-head mode that you can play, but basically it's about trying to fit Tetris-y shapes together. It's something that we've seen before in, well, any number of apps on your phone, which is usually where I have the most fun with them, honestly. And then as well as other game systems. Had Mondrian Blocks I got rid of last month, same basic idea. I like all these game systems. I like it when there's more of a game element on the table as opposed to purely just fitting things in. Ubongo is going to be a series that I think does it better in terms of keeping the elements that you have in this polyomino rearranging, while at the same time being more gamey, if that makes sense. Not gamey as in, like, meat that's very tough, but gamey, if that makes sense. From there we have Kids Chronicles Quest for the Moonstone. Now, I do have to do a bit of research on this one before I actually let this leave my collection, but we finished it. We've gone through the 6 missions that this game comes with. This game comes with a tutorial, then 4 follow-up missions, and then an epic grand finale. We've gone through all that. Myself and my kids, we've gone through them all. We've enjoyed it. We've had a lot of fun with it. But at the same time, we are ready to move on. It was fun. It was good. And now it's time to go play something else, because I've played I've played all the games. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just keep it? I don't. That's the part I need to look into, because maybe I do need to keep it. Maybe there's gonna be more missions unlocked. Maybe there's gonna be an expansion and I need the core box. I don't know any of that, so I need to look into it before I get rid of this, because my kids will want to go through the expansion content. This basically, Kids Chronicles is basically Lucky Duck's Chronicles of Crime system, but extrapolated to a kid-friendly engine. Same basic high notes while being more accessible, more forgiving for various mistakes. I liked Kids Chronicles Crest of the Moonstone. That's not entirely true. I was okay with the experience. I had fun playing with my kids. I did not resent the time playing it. But at the same time, it is definitely focused and catered towards children, so it was probably a little light for myself. Good game system. We'll happily get more content for it. That's why I need to do a little bit of research before this actually leaves, because I'm done with it. But if I need this core box to continue diving into it, well then I shouldn't get rid of it. So we'll see. We'll find out there. Next up, this is the first big surprise. Timestamps are always helpful for these. We have Dominant Species. Now, it's not a huge surprise necessarily. I talked about this in at least one other video, but I almost used the word hate. I don't hate Dominant Species, but I almost used the word hate Dominant Species. I did not enjoy my one play of Dominant Species, and to be clear, it is one play. Dominant Species is in the Board Game Geek Top 100. I think it's around 70 or something like that, and it's a game that I can understand why it's there, but it's a game that I should have by all accounts liked. It has a degree, it has a action planning, so to speak, in the way you have worker placement, but you're planning out your actions, because programming, action programming. It has area control. It's incredibly, in each other's faces and aggressive, and lots of ways to outplay the other players. It has powers and abilities in the form of cards. This should be a game that I love here. I did not have fun. Like, not in the slightest. And I have specific critiques, specific reasons as to why it didn't work for me. First of all, I found the first player advantage to be insane. Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm wrong here. I just am. A game doesn't make it to the number 70 of all time, whatever it is on Board Game Geek, if the first player advantage is so obviously broken. That said, wrong or not, it just felt unfair to the people playing who weren't in first. Basically, first player kept on going back and forth between the same two people. Because in this game, one of the things that it has is, it has this degree of when you take the first player, you don't actually take first player, you just move yourself one up in the slot. Which means you have to spend 4 turns to move from last place to first place, which is just, it's just a lot of effort and energy being devoted to that, and that effort and energy goes out the window if somebody else takes that spot next turn. So it's such an uphill battle that you can never really win if you're not first player. Now again, I'm saying this, that this is my feelings as I played the game were that it was unfair, while recognizing that it's probably balanced, because there's this other aspect where a tie is broken in reverse player order for ties of area control, so it's probably balanced in that sense. Also, to be clear, I was doing just fine in this game. It's not like I was losing. I didn't win, but I was in second place in terms of my game, and I was doing totally fine. I was competitive. I just didn't like the feeling of never having the option to get where I wanted to go. Combine that with a game system that I think is arguably a little bit too messy in terms of just how much stuff is going on. At no point did I ever feel like I could actually be in control. It felt like, okay, I'm going to do stuff, you're going to mess with me, you'll mess with me, I can't stop you, I can just try to build myself up in ways that are better, or hurt you at the same time. So it was not a game that I enjoyed, even though by all accounts, it should be. Oh, and then the last thing, and potentially the worst offender, is keeping track of who has dominance at any given point is a nightmare, to the point that the game rules specifically state that you have to claim dominance. It doesn't say that whoever is dominant. It says in order to be dominant, you have to fulfill the criteria, which is basically adding up a bunch of math, and then claim dominance. Why are the rules phrased that way? Because otherwise you'd always be backtracking every single thing you do in the game, because, oh wait, no, I was dominant 2 turns ago, and then someone's gonna be like, nope, you had to claim dominance, so you weren't. The rules specifically are accounting for the fact that you won't be able to see how the game state is changing, which is obscene to me. That's the part that blows my mind. Would I play this on the computer? I'd be far more willing to play this on the computer. I don't even know if they have a computer version, because at least that would remove one of my complaints around the game. Would I enjoy it past that? Possibly, but I think my biggest critique, not my biggest critique, no, my biggest big picture around Dominant Species is when you combine the length of the experience, because it's not short, with my feelings around it. That's why I dislike it so much. I don't actually think it's that bad. I had an okay time playing it, but I was caught in a 3.5 hour long game where I had complaints about how the game was proceeding. Any game that traps me in a long game while not being for me, well, it got one play. It will not get another. Maybe I'll give, what's the new one? Marine Dominant Species, or Dominant Species Marine. Maybe I'll give that a shot. No guarantees. Some games just aren't for everyone, and that's okay. I really thought this would be a game that worked for me. It didn't. Next up, we have Mini Rogue, a game that I reviewed on the channel. Oh, and by the way, there's no way on earth I'm reviewing Dominant Species. I gave it a single play and really didn't like it. So this is the review you get. It's not going to see that. Anyways, Mini Rogue. Mini Rogue is a game that I did review on the channel. This is one that gives you a little miniature dungeon. It's a fun little dungeon diving, lay out a 3x3 row of cards, make your way through the levels of the dungeon while encountering different things, fighting different monsters, finding treasure, all these different things. Very abstracted dungeon roguelite experience. I didn't love it. I felt there was very minimal player agency in the game. Now, this actually is rated very well, but I felt that there was way too little player agency. I just didn't have fun going through it. There were moments where I was like, oh, I got something cool, or I leveled up a bit, and that was fun, but then most of the time it was, I'm just going to roll dice and see what happens to me, or I'm going to make the obvious choice about which way to progress through the dungeon. I felt there was minimal player agency, a lot of luck, and just not a rewarding enough experience. Did not like it. Next up, we have Brikks. A totally fine roll and write. Totally fine. But that's where it ends. It's a totally fine roll and write. This was not compelling. This was not amazing. This was, to quote myself, totally fine. This basically takes Tetris, little Tetris. You have polynomial pieces, and it has an element of falling down, completing rows. But it had some of the okay parts of roll and writes and some of the okay parts of Tetris. The sum of the parts resulted in a roll and write that was not as good as other roll and writes, and Tetris that was not as good as actual Tetris. It was fine, and I'd play it again if you wanted to. But I am not going to pull this off the shelf when I have other roll and writes that I vastly love, significantly more than I love this one. But again, totally fine. Again, this is where we have this weird balance. I'll go over them at the end, covering which ones I was fine with, which ones I'd rather not play again, and which ones I actually have a hard time saying goodbye to. Next up, we have Candy Lab. This is making a lot of clinking noises. This is my daughter's choice. This was, again, that roundup of games. Of those 5 games we covered, we like them to various degrees, including Candy Lab. 2 of them are being kept. The 3 of them are going away. But from the 3 that are going away, Katamino is totally fine. Sriracha we were not really impressed with. And Candy Lab we liked. We do. But we have a lot of games that we like. And Candy Lab, my daughter, I asked her, like, when we were done with the whole sequence, I said, which of these games do you want to keep? And she only pointed to 2 of them. So we kept those 2, and the other 3 are gone. And Candy Lab is one of them. Candy Lab is fun. You're basically building out, you're fulfilling candy orders in the game. You have these candy rows, these little, I don't even know what maybe it's Bakelite, I don't know what the material is, but it's very fun to actually line up the candy on the table, and then try to arrange structures by rearranging things, do what you need to do to, like, hey, I fulfilled this candy order, look at that, now I have some abilities, and now I have some points, and things like that. A fun little game, solid game, no complaints, but also not one that was overly compelling. It's a solid 3 out of 5, enjoyable experience. Like Brikks, it was totally fine, although not one I'm overly compelled to pull out. Unlike Brikks, Brikks is being compared against other roll and writes, which is a very competitive genre, versus Candy Lab is just a game that we enjoyed but are ready to move on from. Next up, another game I reviewed on the channel, we have World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King, a pandemic game system game. This is one that was fun. I enjoyed it. It's just I like other pandemic games better. Now, it's worth noting, and I may have noted this in the review, I don't recall. I think I did it towards the end. But basically, Pandemic Legacy has spoiled all other Pandemic systems for me. Pandemic Legacy is my favorite version of playing Pandemic. At the same time, I still like other Pandemic games, and I think I still recognize the ones that are better and worse, at least for myself. Pandemic World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King, that's a mouthful for you, which is probably why it's actually called World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King, a pandemic game system. That's way too long. Anyways, this is fun. It combines the elements of World of Warcraft. It has a bunch of powers and abilities. It added some things to the pandemic system that I appreciated. I didn't love the quest-solving aspect of the game, which is kind of the replacement for the curing of a disease in pandemic. I felt it was just not that rewarding to consistently flash cards in your hand and just take actions. The quest part was really just anticlimactic for me. The other elements I actually liked. I thought that they made a lot of solid changes that gave me a little bit of a powers and abilities feel to the pandemic system. Just the quests were anticlimactic. Did not appreciate those. And so overall, it's a pandemic game that I enjoyed, would play again, but not in comparison to other pandemic systems that I could dive into instead. Next up, we have a game I did not review on the channel, Capital Lux 2. Capital Lux 2 Generations. This is actually a lot of fun stuff going on in this game. A lot of fun stuff. This is one of those ones that we start moving into. We have 4 games left, okay? Well, including this. 4 games including this. And I would say that this is the first of the 4 games that are actually harder for me to get rid of. Although we have a giant asterisk around Quest for the Moonstone, because technically it's, technically I may or may not get rid of it. We'll see. Anyways, Capital Lux 2 Generations is one that I was very torn on this one. It's from Porta Games. It's the second version of Capital Lux, and I was very torn on this one because it's actually fairly compelling, just wasn't compelling enough. But I kind of want to dive into it more. I just didn't. There's a lot of stuff in this box. Lots of expansions, contents, way to mix things up the experience, whatever. Anyways, the idea of the game is you have this capital that you're playing cards into, and then you have your own personal board that you're playing cards into. You're going to draft a hand of cards in the game, and then you're going to choose where to play the cards. The balance of the game is, well, twofold. First of all, when you play cards in front of you, those represent potential points. Think of it as area control to a degree, but not really area control, majority control, whatever it is. You're trying to get cards in front of you in all of their respective colors. The problem is, if the cards in front of you exceed the amount of the capital, then you have to get rid of all of them. You can never be more powerful than the capital, as the thematic tie-in I have going on. So you're playing cards to the capital too. Now you might say that's not fair. You're going to play a card to the capital that helps the other players. That's not great. But the cards in the capital, when you play to the capital, you also take the ability of that color. And this is where the variability of the game system comes into play, because the box comes with a whole lot of different ways you can have different abilities. Maybe I play a card to a spot and I draw a card. Maybe I play a card and I place different agents on the board. Maybe I play a card and I get extra coin tokens. There's all these different things you can do to manipulate the game engine based on the abilities that the capital has. So yes, you're helping all players, but you're the one who gets the ability. So it has this interesting element of drafting the right cards that you'll think you'll be able to play, so that you can both help yourself score majorities, as well as ensure that the capital is strong and well rewarded and all those things. And then at the end of each round, you'll score majorities and get cards from the capital in those majorities that will go into your point scoring pile, safe and locked. That's what's going on in the game. For me, I played it once or twice, and then played it twice, and then I want to explore more of the combos and the abilities, but I just, again, I'm torn on this one. This is one of the ones I'm torn on, but it is not staying in the collection. It was fun, it was enjoyable, I think there's more here. It's a game that I can easily recommend. If I were rating this one right now, it'd be a 3 out of 5, solid 3 out of 5, but I'm not continuously diving into this one. I don't think there's a review going up on the channel. If I happen to get more plays in before this leaves, then maybe I'll review it. Otherwise, the past 3 minutes is the review you're getting. From there we have, moving on, we have another cheat, sort of, which is Robin Hood. The Adventures of Robin Hood from Cosmos Games. This, like Kids Chronicles, Quest for the Moonstones, Robin Hood may or may not actually leave. I have to look into it. It's here right now because I finished it. I finished it with my daughter. We played a total of, I want to say, 9 games, because the game, the full progression of pathway has 7 total games. Strictly speaking, we could dive into the games we didn't play and get another 2 more, but we also had some losses, hence the total of 9 plays. But then we're done. We finished the adventure. We got to our conclusion. We're not going to tell you what happened because that would be spoilers, and this game is fun to go through. I reviewed this one on the channel. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I stand by that rating while wanting to dive into the expansion content. It's weird because mechanically speaking, I find the Adventures of Robin Hood to be fairly light. Mechanically speaking, you're just moving around the board and interacting with stuff. It's really just a narrative experience of exploration. Are there decisions to be made to try to optimize your chance of winning? Of course there are. There are mechanics in the game. It's just very, very much on the lighter side. So for me, I find myself in this interesting spot. Like, a good reference point is, do I want to dive into it to try those 2 missions we didn't get to try? Because during the course of the game, you effectively have 5 missions, or is it 4 missions? You have 4 missions, then you have 2 branching missions, so you have a choice of 2 missions, followed by a final conclusion. So by choosing a pathway, we have left off the other pathway. If I was compelled enough by the game, I'd want to dive into those other 2 missions to see what it is we missed. Show me those stories. And then more than that, one of my favorite parts of the game, favorite and least favorite parts, depends how you look at it, is the fact that when you lose a mission, you actually unlock a new narrative branch to kind of have a recovery mode. In other words, if I win a mission, which we won most of our missions, strictly speaking, I'm cutting off elements of the game that I will never get to explore. Now, the second time you lose a mission, you're just repeating things. At that point, it's just, repetition. But the first time you lose a mission, you're actually unlocking new stuff that you haven't otherwise seen access to, which is interesting because it feels like by winning most of our missions, we just have locked off a lot of the stuff we could theoretically explore. And again, we could simulate that. We can go into each of these missions, say we lost, and simulate a loss and find more things. I'm not that compelled. But I am compelled enough that when there's an expansion, and there is an expansion coming, I will want to dive back into it. So I may hold on to the game. I don't know yet. I'll figure that out. I have to look more into the expansion. But I enjoyed my time with it. My daughter and I went through the full thing. Like I said already, 9 games is a lot of any game. Many of the games in my collection don't see 9 plays. Many do, but many don't. And so this one is doing totally fine. Despite it being a 3 out of 5, mechanically speaking, very okay. But the sense of element and exploration and story was fun enough that I'm looking forward to whatever expansion they throw my way. There's elements of the There's stuff that I know should be happening in the game that never did, that I do feel a little bit like I missed out on. Not enough to play through it, though. That is The Adventures of Robin Hood. The Adventures of Robin Hood. Let's go ahead and turn that box so you don't see that barcode over there. Although it's going to bother you that it's on a slant. That's okay. We can't have everything perfectly. Next up, we have Merchants of the Dark Road. And this is another semi-cheat, because I haven't figured out exactly what I'm doing. Merchants of the Dark Road, I have this particular box that was sent by the publisher, and then I have actually backed it as well, so I have the full all-in. The full all-in I already sold. I unboxed it knowing I was getting rid of it, but then I couldn't justify keeping the full all-in for a game that I was okay with. It was good. I enjoyed Merchants of the Dark Road. It's a 3.5 out of 5 for me, which is a good game system. The problem is it starts leaning more towards the heavy genre, and I tend to be harder on heavier games, meaning a game that I can play in half an hour to an hour with my wife, my kids, my family, gateway. Those things get played more often just as a matter of practicality. So I tend to be lighter, or not lighter, I tend to be easier on lighter experiences, and a 3.5 or even a 3 sometimes could be a game that stays in my collection. The more a game drifts into the spot where I'd only be playing it at game night with other people in my game group, then I start getting more and more hard on those games, because honestly the amount of those games in my collection that aren't seeing play, it's brutal. And so I have a choice to make. Would I rather play Merchants of the Dark Road, or Lorenzo Magnifico, or Coimbra, or Food Chain Magnet, or Brass, or Terraforming Mars? And the answer there is all the other ones. I liked Merchants of the Dark Road. I'd happily play it. But I'd rather play all the other ones, and those aren't seeing enough play. The caveat here is there's an expansion coming. They've confirmed there's an expansion coming in some way, shape, or form, and I like this enough to try to want to see where the expansion takes the system. So do I hold on to this core simple, again, not the deluxe, I can't justify holding on to the deluxe, but do I hold on to this core pledge in the hopes that I'll actually get the expansion and it'll change my mind? Not, or up the level, or whatever it is? Maybe? I don't know. Like I said already, we start moving into hard choices here. This might stay. If it stays, though, it's only staying so that I can eventually play it with the expansion content, which is why it's still going to make this video, that's for sure. Whether or not this actually ends up leaving my collection, I don't know. I'm not willing to make that guarantee just yet, but even if it stays, it's only staying as a placeholder for the expansion, so it will make the cut for this video. And lastly, and finally, the big one, which is not really that big, but for me it's a big deal, is Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation. Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation is from Reina Knizia. I think it's Reina Knizia. I believe so. Is that... Just show me the name. Show me the name. Somewhere, nothing... Does it not say his name anywhere on the box? Is this not a Reina Knizia title? Give me a second here. I need to check this out. I'm, like, so sure this is Reina Knizia, but it doesn't say it on the box. You would think it would say it on the box, right? Nothing, nothing, nothing. No name. No name. Like, come on, come on. What is up here? Oh, yeah. It says in the box. My bad. It says in the box in the bottom corner. A game by Reina Knizia. Okay. Reina Knizia, Lord of the Rings, is such a phenomenal game. It is so good. It is ridiculously good. It's going to join the ranks of some games that just over time have left my collection because I've played them enough and I don't pull them out anymore. Lord of the Rings is one that I could see myself getting back one day. If I find myself compelled to play it and I no longer own it and I'm like, oh no, I got rid of it, then yeah, I'll get it back. The problem is, practically speaking, I haven't been compelled to play it in a long time. It's a great game. It's an incredible experience. It simulates the battle between good and evil, between Frodo and the hobbits, and then the wraith ghoul thingy. I don't know the names. It's all good, but it simulates the king thingy. I can't remember the names of the characters of the game. The Balrog. You have the Balrog. You're going through the tunnel. It has all these aspects of the game, and it really feels like the dark power, Sauron, all that stuff over there. It feels like they're stronger. And yet it feels like the Frodo and the Hobbits and all the good guys have more clever tricks up their sleeves. So it very much encapsulates that feeling of the movie. And you go head-to-head in what is ultimately Stratego combined with double bluffing, combined with less stuff on the table, so it's not as obviously, but effectively you have the Stratego element where you have your characters are hidden, and you move them forward, and you walk into the player, and you reveal, and you deal with whatever the ramifications of that battle sequence are. There's a degree of the game feels like cat and mouse. It feels like trying to escape, trying to move forward, trying to make progress, trying to deliver the ring to the Shire. But someone's trying to stop you. This is not a cooperative experience. This is a head-to-head experience. Someone's playing as Frodo, trying to get the ring to the Shire. Someone else is trying to stop him. And so you're going to go back and forth trying to figure out how to outthink, how to outplay the other player. It is so ridiculously good. It's really, really good. You should pick this one up. Like, really pick this game up. It is such a good experience. If you like Lord of the Rings as a theme, if you like two-player head-to-head experiences, this is such a ridiculously good game. Also, like I said already, I've played it a lot, and I don't pull it out quite as much as I used to. But from all the games here that I have any regrets about, or any qualms, or any concerns that it might be coming back to my collection, Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation is definitely that game. if at some point in the future I find myself sitting down at the table across from somebody else, and when we think through what the games we want to play are, if this enters my mind, I will get it back. It just hasn't done that in a long time, despite how good it is, which is why it's time to go. For context, the last like 5 or 6 Leave My Collection videos, I've eyed this one, and I've debated whether this makes the cut. But it's been safe, despite not being played the entire time. I'm so sad with this one. I'm really genuinely sad with this one. Like, it's a good game. It's a good game, but good games are there's a lot of good games out there. They don't all have to stay, and if they're not being played, it's time to go. And that is it. These are the games leaving the collection for January of 2022. Once again, quick roundup. Sriracha, forgettable. Katamino, okay. Quest of the Moonstones, enjoyable with the kids, not enjoyable for my own stance. Wrath of the Lich King, World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King, fine, but not my favorite Pneumonic system. Merchant of the Dark Road, liked it enough to want to dive in with the expansion. Stitchin, another trick-taking game that I did not love. Lord of the Rings, The Confrontation, dear Lord, I am sad. Mini Rogue is not a game that I enjoyed. Robin Hood, Adventures of Robin Hood, did not like the mechanics, liked the story elements. Candy Lab, okay, more of a kid's game, but one that my daughter chose to let go. Brikks, a roll and write that is fine, but not an amazing one. We have Capital Lux 2, a game I liked enough to kind of want to dive more into, but am choosing not to just because of the number of games I need to play or have and all that stuff. And finally, Dominant Species, a game that I wanted to love, thought I would love, and really is just not for me, unfortunately. If you have any, I usually get comments or questions about how do you sell games, what do you do with them. Usually I list them on Facebook, on a board game group. I'll put a link in the description down below of a video, not of the games, but of a video I did on selling games in case you want to know, how do you sell your games? What do you do when it's time to get rid of a game? This is more of a US-centric thing, United States, based on where I am, but I'm sure different countries, different places have their own marketplaces. Wherever you are, if you're in Canada, you might have Kijiji. If you're wherever else, I just know Canada because I'm from Canada. But there's basically, when you get rid of a game, when you're done with the game, when it's time to move on from it, you can turn around and recycle it. You can trade it to other people, you can sell it, you can gift it, but there's many different ways to get rid of games. For me, I just don't want my shelves always filling up. I need to be emptying them so that I can get the next game. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Thanks for going through this whole thing and making your way to the end, and as always, have a good one.